reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this legislation extends the authorization for a special assessment for domestic trafficking victims fund for 19 days. The special assessment is a $5,000 fine levied against someone convicted of certain federal trafficking and sexual abuse offenses. These offenses include human smuggling, human trafficking, and sexual abuse of minors, among others. This $5,000 fine is in addition to other restitution or compensation that offenders might be forced to pay, such as court-ordered fines, orders of restitution, and other fines related to victim compensation. Of course, an additional $5,000 fine can never adequately deter criminals from committing these heinous acts. A much more effective solution would be to make it more difficult for criminals to traffic and smuggle people across our borders in the first place. Unfortunately, House Democrats are flat out unwilling to do anything to stop the Biden border crisis. For 21 months, we have seen how dangerous criminals have exploited our open borders to smuggle people and drugs, particularly fentanyl, into our country. The blame for the border crisis and also our crime crisis lies squarely at the feet of the radical left's agenda and their anti-law enforcement agenda. House Republicans are more than willing to increase penalties for human trafficking and human smuggling, but the House can and should do much more to address the catastrophic border crisis caused by President Biden's failures. Literally, in 20 months, we have went from a secure border to no border. It would help if we actually had a border again to deal with these issues that we are discussing here today. I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman reserves.
We talk about the concern of the environment as an elitist concern. 1 year ago, I was waitressing in a taco shop in downtown Manhattan. I just got health insurance for the first time a month ago. This is not an elitist issue. This is a quality of life issue. You want to tell people that their concern and their desire for clean air and clean water is elitist? Tell that to the kids in the South Bronx, which are suffering from the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country. Tell that to the families in Flint, whose kids have their blood is ascending in lead levels. Their brains are damaged for the rest of their lives. Call them elitist.
From Ohio is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. The majority leader just a few minutes ago used the term danger to our democracy. Danger to our democracy. Think about this. Democrats have closed the Capitol, allowed proxy voting, kicked Republicans off committee, won't let Republicans serve on this select committee. First time in the history of the Congress, the minority leader was not allowed to put on a select committee the individuals he or she selected. First time in the history of our nation. Democrats are trying to end the Electoral College, trying to end the filibuster, trying to pack the court. This committee, the January 6th committee, altered evidence and presented to the American people as if it were true. And they accuse us of being a danger to our democracy? Mr. Gates was right. We got a border that is complete chaos. We have $6 gas in California, $4 gas everywhere else in the country. We have crime at record levels in every major urban area in this nation. And we have an inflation problem that's at a 40-year high. And this committee has more contempt resolutions for a purely political reason. I think the whole committee is purely political, designed to do one thing: keep President Trump off the ballot in 2024. The gentlelady from Wyoming, in her opening comments, used the term false message. False message. She used to say big lie. Now I guess it's false message. And I just jotted down. I thought when she said, I started jotting things down. False. Think about all the false messages we've got from them in the last few years. They told us the protests in the summer of 2020 were peaceful. Got $1 billion worth of damage around our cities that says it wasn't. They told us the dossier was real. They told us it was Republicans who wanted to defund the police. That's almost laughable if it wasn't so serious for our law enforcement and for the families who live in those areas where mayors and city councils did defund the police. They told us the FBI didn't spy on the Trump campaign. We know that wasn't true. We got Inspector General reports that tell us all kinds of things about what they did in front of the FISA court. They said Trump colluded with Russia. We got a Mueller report. 19 lawyers, 40 FBI agents, 30 million hard-earned American tax dollars in that report that said that false message was just that, false. They told us COVID didn't start in the lab. Sure looks like it did. They told us the lab wasn't doing gain-of-function research. Sure looks like it was. They told us the vaccinated can't get it. We know that's wrong. Every day there's a new announcement. A member of Congress is getting it. Fully vaccinated, boosted, everything else. They told us the vaccinated can't transmit it. They told us that was wrong. And you talk about the biggest false message that's just been confirmed in the last week, how false it was. The Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. The Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. October 22nd, 2020, 2 weeks before the election, candidate Biden, in a debate, is asked about his son's business dealings with foreign companies. He says, quote, nothing was unethical. He said, my son has not made money with business interests with companies with an interest in China. And we all know there are 4.8 million reasons why that statement was not accurate. And how do we know? Washington Post told us. Not me, not President Trump, not Republicans. The Washington Post told us last week, 2 stories last week, a week ago today, one at 11 a.m., one at 11:04 a.m., 2 8-page articles 4 minutes apart confirming what we knew, but what big media, big tech, Democrats colluded to keep from the American people just days before the most important election we have, the presidential election, who's going to be our next commander-in-chief. The laptop was real, the eyewitness was real, the emails were real. The only thing fake was that collusion from those individuals, those entities, to keep important information from we the people in the run-up to the most important election we have. And oh, by the way, they were joined by 51 former intel officials, joined in the collusion. You know, it's also interesting, it's funny how that story has changed. 18 months ago, started off, wasn't his laptop, quickly switched to, well, it was his laptop, but it was Russian disinformation. And now it is, well, it wasn't Russian disinformation, but Joe Biden had nothing to do with it. Now it was, well, Joe knew what was going on, but he wasn't really involved in anything wrong. Ron Klain told us that. Chief of Staff told us that Sunday. We need to be focused on the issues that the American people want us to focus on. If you want to talk about danger to our democracy and the biggest false message, I would say what happened, one of the biggest dangers to our democracy and one of the biggest false messages is what happened 18 months ago, where that story was kept from the American people. We could dig into that, find out what went on there, why that happened, and we could also focus on the record crime, record inflation, record price of gas, and the chaos on our southern border that's about to get worse as the Democrats look to, as the Biden
Gentleman's recognized for 30 more seconds.
Title 42. I urge a no vote and yield back.
Gentleman from Indiana reserves.
I reserve.
Gentleman from Indiana.
Madam Speaker, I yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. Look, we've seen the worst 10 months of any administration in history. We went from a secure border to chaos. We went from safe streets to violent crime. We've seen stable prices turn into inflation and empty shelves. The respect around the world we had is now turned into the debacle that was the exit from Afghanistan. And we went from peace in the Middle East with the Abraham Accords to thousands of rockets being fired on our friend and ally Israel, not to mention energy independence, to now the spectacle of the President of the United States begging OPEC to increase production. But what scares me most is what this administration and Democrats are doing to freedom. Every right we enjoy under the First Amendment has been assaulted over the last year. Your right to practice your faith, still places today in the country where a full congregation can't meet on Sunday morning. Your right to petition your government, your right to assemble, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, every single one's been attacked. We just learned in the Judiciary Committee from the Attorney General. National School Boards Association last month, September 29th, sends a letter to the President of the United States asking the FBI to get involved in local school board matters. 5 days later, the Attorney General issues a memo to do just that. First sentence of the memo says this. This is the Attorney General's memo. In recent months, there's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, threats at school board meetings. We ask him a simple question. What's the evidence for that spike in threats? What's the data? What did you review? Guess what his answer was? His only evidence, the only thing he reviewed, was the letter from the School Boards Association, from a political organization. And now they're going to target parents at school board meetings, and we have the January 6th committee issuing subpoena after subpoena. 11 of the people they've issued subpoenas to were names on an application asking the government for permission to hold the rally. Individuals exercising their First Amendment right to assemble, asked the government for permission, the government granted them permission, and now these 20 and 30-year-olds whose name are on that application, they're going to be deposed by these guys for simply exercising their first. Here's what they're asking them. Here's what they ask them. We want to know who the selection of speakers, who the speakers were and how were they selected. We want to know any communications these people who put their names on a permit, got permission from the government. We want to know any member of Congress you talked to. Wow. Your right to petition your government? That's what they want to subpoena. That's why they're subpoenaing these people? This is scary where they want to go. I mean, these questions, coordination of speakers, discussions of contents, this sounds like what the IRS did to people 10 years ago when they were asking 501c groups applying for tax-exempt status, do you pray at the start of your meeting? I mean, first it's school boards, then it's people applying for a permit. We saw what they did to people, what the IRS did to people just a few years ago. Not to mention what else the committee's doing. Preservation letters to all the carriers, all the companies. Preserve every call, every email, every text. Think about that. Every call someone made to hundreds and hundreds, supposedly, according to news reports, they've done this for. Text to your spouse, calls to your mom, preserve it all. And this is just what we know about. This is just what's been reported. I mean, now Steve Bannon. Mr. Bannon is a target of the investigation, for the investigation, because, quote, this is from the Select Committee's own report, quote, his efforts to plan political activity. That's the standard. You're involved in political activity, they're going to investigate you. We know what this is really about. This is about getting at President Trump. Getting at President Trump. Tried to stop President Trump before he was even elected with the Russia investigation. Tried to remove President Trump from office twice. While he was in office, they tried to do that. And now they're trying to get him after the fact, after he's left. All because this guy cut taxes, reduced regulations, greatest economy in the history, greatest economy in 50 years, lowest unemployment, all because he built the wall, got us out of the Iran deal, put the embassy in Jerusalem. When President Trump was president, Americans got their Christmas presents on time, but they're coming after him. The Reuters story said this: the FBI has found no evidence that President Trump or people directly around him were involved in organizing the violence. They don't care. They don't care the FBI has no evidence. Senate report said no evidence of a coordinated plan. They don't care. They're going to drag these 11 people into subpoenas, in for depositions with subpoenas, because they're so determined to get their political enemies.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Mississippi.
Yield back then.